Today I'd like to kind of, as we move into Easter, coming into Easter, I'd like to kind of look at something like this broad overview of what is going on. A broad overview of not just Easter, but in a sense, what God's plan is. Sometimes we forget. We kind of get into our little individual looking salvation. It's like my focus can only be on me, and I only see things from just a very personal perspective. And there's nothing wrong with your perspective of your life and your salvation. Even the scriptures tell us to individually, for each and every one of us, to work out our salvation. It's an individual thing. But we, in the pursuit of our individual salvation, we sometimes lose sight of something bigger, that God's plan isn't just for me, the individual. Even I could say for my people in my family, or as we kind of grow out, our concentric circles of concern, if you will, don't go out very far. But God's plan, God sending His Son to die for us, is not just for me, it is for the whole world. We forget that. And whenever we get up here and we talk, we pull scriptures out of Colossians, serious, right? Colossians, serious business, right, Eric?
That's serious business.
Serious business here. When you say, when we get up, now, not quite fire and brimstone, but it's some good stuff. So I'm going to pull these scriptures right out of Paul's writings here in the early part of Colossians, and starting in chapter 1, verse 19, and I'm going to read through 23. For God was pleased to have all His fullness dwell in Him, and through Him to reconcile to Himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through His blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now He has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in His sight, without blemish and free from accusation. If you continue in your faith, established and firm, not moved from the hope held in the gospel, this is the gospel that you have heard and that has been proclaimed to every creature under heaven, and of which I, Paul, have become a servant. The gospel proclaimed to every creature. That's an odd word. When we talk about, we don't see ourselves as creatures, do we? But little critters running around, those are creatures, right? And the gospel has been proclaimed to them also. How is that? Let me get into this. Little fun fact here. Let's look at it from a bigger, just back out from our individual perspective and try to take a much more grander view of what God did through Jesus, has done, and what is doing through Jesus Christ in our lives, but in the whole world. And that is to realize something very, very plain and simple, that God has a plan for His fallen world. We've rebelled against God, and you can read that in Genesis 3. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. You can go into Genesis 2 and 3, and you can see what happened. Okay? You got these people who live in the garden that God made, man and a woman, and they were tempted by Satan to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they gave in, and they ate of it, and then God did a bunch of stuff. And it was not good stuff. Okay? The fall was massive. The earth, the creation was marred. We are broken. Creation is broken. That's perspective number one we need to have when seeing the world. When we view the world, when you turn on the news and you see all the garbage that's happening, when you witness it firsthand locally, when you see stuff going on, it should be no surprise to us. We understand that from the beginning, man walked away from God, and there was consequences to that, and that is that we are broken in our very spirits. At one time we didn't die. Adam and Eve were not created to die, yet they died because of sin, because of their brokenness. Reminds me of one of the Beatitudes where Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And that's, when you look at the Beatitudes like that, what does that mean? And why will in the kingdom, when these things that are the Beatitudes, these attitudes in the kingdom, why will those who mourn be comforted? It's not so much about losing a loved one, but why losing a loved one stings so hard. It's because it was never supposed to be this way. This was not the mourning we have is not just for the loss of someone, but because of the situation we all find ourselves in, is that we die because we are sinful. Yep. God had a plan, a dream of the world, if you want to call it, how the world was supposed to be, and then gave us reign over it, and we messed that up big time. And the world is no longer as God intended it to be. So now, what happens, I see this a lot, is happening in Christian circles, is that we tend to feel that because we have been rescued from the world, because we have had this connection with God and been saved. I'm going to use that in quotations because we throw it out there a lot. I don't think the people that often throw it out there really know the full consequences of what they're saying. Doesn't mean that they have salvation and been saved. But we get into this idea of us, the Christians, the God's elect, the blessed ones, and then the world, the worldly ones over here, those people. The unwashed, the unclean. What we forget is that we were them. Yeah. That was us. God has a plan, and the plan isn't just for us. It's for them too, and this plan is still being unfolded. We have come to it at this point, but the plan is still for them. So when we look at those who practice things that are not kosher in the Bible, have lifestyles outside of biblical standing, good standing, if we witness things going on, we should not have the attitude that, I love this one, this whole already sending people to hell deal. We do that a lot, don't we? Already write people off. We write people off because they live a certain lifestyle, they've maybe rejected religion or Christianity, and we already they're going to hell. We write them off. But God is right now in the act of chasing those people down, to reconcile them, to redeem them back to Him. You got to understand another fact, a good old fun fact. Who rules the earth?
Satan.
That's a hard one to see, because we sing good songs about how God's the sovereign we talk a lot about God's sovereignty. We talk a lot about how God is in control. And He is. That's not an untrue statement. God is in absolute control. Amen. But when man, let's see what happened in the garden, was really a transfer of power, of rulership. It's where we chose our ruler. Adam and Eve chose to follow Satan and to reject God. What happened was that God said, okay, then he now is your new king. I'll just back up and I'll work things from the shadows. But he's now the ruler of this earth. It still is true today. And until Jesus Christ descends from heaven and takes the throne upon this world, Satan will be the ruler of this world. Now, does Satan have the power of God? No. That's the sad part, is that we traded the most awesome being to, if you want to rule you, the most just and perfect ruler, till we traded that one for the deceiver. So when we look at the world, when we look out there, let's not condemn it. We're not here to condemn. Jesus didn't put us here to be condemning the world, but to be the act of helping Him in our circle of influence to bring the gospel everywhere, so that that light would change, that light of the gospel would change the darkness, would penetrate through the darkness and bring souls into the fold. We get this idea because we're safe and sound. We're the sheep that are safe and sound in the pen, right? We got the shepherd, the good shepherds looking after us. We got it good. They don't know that. They don't know what it's like to feel safe and complete in the pen with the shepherd looking after us. God's got a plan. His plan unfolded through Jesus Christ. You know the Romans 8:20 verse? Romans 8:20 through 23. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. God's got a plan. And it's unfolding very before us, and we have become participants. When you walked that aisle or prayed that prayer, whenever that moment came where you surrendered your life to Jesus Christ, and you said, you are now my Lord. I'm trading this garbage of a deceiver, Satan, I'm trading him in for the most awesome ruler, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. I'm trading him in for you. You became now participants that the Heavenly Father is doing through Jesus on this earth to bring redemption to the lost. There's three ways in Colossians Colossians 1:19 through 23, that we look three ways in which we are, in a sense, that we were separated from God, that the world is separated from God. It gives us three ways. First, it says we are alienated, means we are cut off or estranged. That we're no longer part of God's family. We're estranged, not us, the saved, but the lost. The ones that we were at one time, we were alienated from God. Our behavior, our attitude, our sinfulness, our nature was so broken that it was no longer resembled the icon that God breathed into Adam and Eve. The image of God that was breathed into Adam and Eve no longer resembled them. our nature, the very fiber of who we are was broken. It says our minds were hostile towards God. I don't know what it's like. I can't remember. I became a believer as an 11-year-old boy. I don't remember a lot of hostility towards God. I was raised in a home that was a Christian home. So I don't remember being taught hostility to God, but only the opposite. But I do live in a world in which I'm surrounded by a lot of people who say hateful things about God and about Jesus. There is this hostility towards God. There is definitely this idea that, which I get all the time in talking about God with people who are lost, is this: I'm not good enough. God will never accept me. I'm too evil. I'm too bad. I've done too many bad things. Yeah? I've done bad things as a believer. Can we all say that? I've done some horrible things. I've said some horrible things. I've acted in horrible ways, even as a believer. I'm not sitting up here saying I'm proud of it. I'm just telling you, we're all in this boat together in the brokenness of our souls, the brokenness in our spirit, the brokenness in our hearts. The very nature of us is broken, and God is at work in me and in you to bring reconciliation to where that image that once was lost is now found in us again. I had a friend. I was doing a couple carpool rides down to West Palm for a project store, Winn-Dixie project store down in Loxahatchee, Florida. Have you ever been there? It's Loxahatchee. And actually, it's not quite Loxahatchee. It's called Westgate. So if you have Loxahatchee, Florida, it's like the West Palm Beach rednecks live there, right? Westgate is like the hoity-toity redneck section. The property values are about $200,000 more than the regular Loxahatchee. It's a more exclusive neighborhood. It's just you still drive the neighborhoods, they still got $800,000 home in a jacked up truck next to it. I mean, it's still redneck. It's just hoity-toity redneck. And look, I'm not making fun because I are one too. All right. I mean, I'm a hunting big truck loving guy myself. All right. But that's where I was. On the way there, a 2-hour drive there, 2-hour ride back, and I got to talk to my friend who is not a believer in Jesus Christ. He's just a co-worker that is my same position but at another store. And somehow we got on the talking of religions, God, Jesus, stuff like that. And then the next trip down there was a very, very, where this person opened up to me about something, wanted my advice. So I'm not mentioning a name, I'm not mentioning any names here, but I'm going to tell you this, the outcome of this story is amazing. He shared to me that he's a single guy, and that at the store he was working up in somewhere in Melbourne area, that he became involved in a relationship with a married woman. He fell in love with her, but she was not going to leave her husband. And eventually it came to a head where they were found out, and then all contact was dropped. I'm not going to give you all the details of what I said to him because those are kind of private things, but the point I'm going to tell you is that he was impressed with something. When I talked about his part in his part within the moral choice of being involved with a married woman, and I talked about her choice of going into the affair and cheating on her husband. I went into it, but I was very plain, very calm, very non-judgmental, and that's what he said. He goes, "No, Brian, I'm going to use a little bit of language here. I'm going to warn you if you don't want to hear it." Okay? This is what he said. He goes, "I talked to my friends who are not Christians, and I never got past the third sentence of explaining what happened, and they said this about her: you shouldn't date a whore. She's a slut. You shouldn't be around her." I talked to you, Bryan, a Christian, who I thought was going to give me the same thing and only worse, but you talk with her with respect and dignity. Why? I don't understand. I said, because it's not, because when you believe what I believe, you have to know that you are wrong. You have to come to a place and when you know the fact that your being, who you are and everything you do is marred and sinful and wrong. That we are not right in any way. When you look at the perfection, you stack that up against God's perfection, we are... Yeah, this is not an uplifting sermon, is it? We're not... When you put God's perfection before you, you cannot stack up to it. To enter the gate into salvation, you have to admit that you are a sinner. You have to say to God, God, I'm wrong, and I'm wrong about everything. And I hope I'm not wrong about you, because I'm putting my trust into you to change this about me. I hope that we can see the world in that light. That people do things. People are wrong, but they're no different than us. When we start standing up and go, well, she's just a whore. You should. When we put that attitude like that, well, we're judging. And what did Jesus tell us about judging others? The same way we judge, we will be judged. And then our minds were hostile to God. And the third way is that we engaged in evil deeds. And I think we probably could go down as that because we were alienated and our minds were changed, we did evil things. And from the moment of the curse, God has worked to rescue. From the moment of the curse, the moment He's uttering the curse, there'd be that man and woman would be estranged from one another, and there would be hardship and labor, and the ground would be harder to grow stuff. I mean, He just laid upon this curse. The creation is just boom, 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 getting clobbered by God. Entire time, God is going, but I got a plan. I got a plan to fix it. It's going to come a time where it's not going to be like this. I'm going to fix it. And we know that time spring came to tuition 2,000 years ago when Jesus was born. That became the beginning of the end. The plan hatching. The plan was released. It's like Satan is the ruler and his minions are the rulers of this earth, and Jesus Christ is the leader of the insurgency. And we've joined the insurgency to take back this world for God. So the means, next is the... You got really jumped ahead of me there. The means of reconciliation. That might have been me. I got off on a lot of tangents there. Sorry!
You're human.
Exactly.
Betrayal is necessary.
All right. To reconcile means to restore and to cause to exist in the harmony, and that is back. So the reconciliation is not just the human person to be reconciled and in harmony with God, but all of creation. It's I don't understand, like the end time stuff, you hear a lot about what's going to be done at the end, right? And some people have this idea that God is going to just destroy it all. Like He's just going to wipe. It's like this is a detailer. It's an older woman that used to work for me. It's called a detailer. Detailers come in at night and they fix all the shelves. They pull all the product up and they make it look all nice and pretty, right? She was an older woman. She had a bit of I guess when you get older, you get all crotchety about things. No, I see it in myself. I see it as I'm getting older. I see it. Don't worry. I work with all types of old. I found myself like almost becoming my dad. Like, these would be, I just remember walking by and there was a end cap of cans. Back then, when Dixie had this idea that they didn't want to put the nice serrated cans that stack real nice and easy. So it would take a lot more to stack cans. And she was having problems stacking these cans up on this, and it kept falling down. She stacked them up again, they fall down. About the third time, she did this. She went, wow! She just talked them all up there and then started again. And she saw me looking and she's like so embarrassed. And I'm like, I mean, honestly, Kathy, I would have done the same thing. I would have been that frustrated and done the same thing. Somebody see that God is going to somehow just wipe it out. Boom! Just gone. And start again. Like just is new. I think in which God is really going to do, it's not like He's going to just burn it all to the ground. God made it. God doesn't make stuff that He's not proud of, that isn't eternal. God makes eternal things. And when He created us and He created the world, He created all creation, it's eternal. It's a reflection of Him. He's not just going to burn it. He will renew it. It is being renewed. As you are being renewed, so is all of creation being renewed. The plan isn't just you and I. The plan is for it all to look like it was when He uttered the syllables of creation. And things were. Let there be light. Let there be the heavens and the earth. Let there be plants and animals. Let there be, when it was like that, is the renewal of all things. Can you imagine that is that we're going to be going into what it was like when things were harmonious and perfect? That's what is the ultimate plan for us, for the world. Do you think that God, when it comes time and the sheep are separated from the goats at the great judgment, and that God has to cast the goats away? Do you think He does that with like a smiling face and on you? Or do you think there will be tears? Do you think the weeping and the gnashing of teeth will also be the weeping of God as souls that He created are being cast away because they could not come to faith in His Son? I don't think it's going to be a pretty day. It's not going to be. Maybe we might feel some vindication. I don't know, but I don't think so. I think this weeping we will see is the ones that we loved and we cared for are among those who never gave their life to Christ, and they're cast away. We'll see them no longer. I think that is why we have a job ahead of us that is worth every bit of our effort and strong effort, so that we can snatch from that fate every living soul possible to come into the sheep pen with us. I don't know who wrote this, because somewhere in my sermon preparation I didn't write who wrote this, which is bad because it's plagiarism. So I'm just telling you, I didn't write this. Somebody else did. I just don't know who. I don't remember who. I was all over the place. All sorts of writing. But anyway, this is very good. God's passionate yearning for His children God's passionate yearning for His children's return home is never abated. The fire of love burning in His heart is unquenchable, constant, and continuous. Nothing lessens that love or turns it into hate. God is that hound of heaven who pursues us down the nights and days, who moves my soul to seek Him, seeking me, who loves us to the cross. I am the one to be reconciled. I am the one to be moved to penitence and surrender. That is our attitude. That is the great attitude to have. That we're amongst those who are counted as the world. We've been pulled out, rescued, and now we need, it's like we're being put back into the world to be a part of this reconciliation process. Christ real physical body and death were necessary for man's salvation. That we cannot. We can talk about eternal life, but we didn't have eternal life until Jesus was resurrected. Oh, you had to have Jesus' death in order to have a resurrection. And you had to have death to have sacrifice in order for there to be atonement of sin. Jesus' blood had to be shed to cover our sin. Jesus had to go to the cross to take our sin upon himself. You know, he didn't just take my sin. And he didn't just take your sin. He took the sin of the entire world upon himself.
Amen.
I think that's where we where our estimation of what the crucifixion was, because we know the result. He didn't really, he died, but he's not dead now, he's alive. So we think that lessens something. It doesn't. That Jesus, that was perfect. It is perfect. Jesus, the perfect human being, who did more for his fellow man, who uplifted more people while he was on this earth, who healed more people than anybody, who made lives better wherever he was surrounded. And that man had to be rejected by his Father because mine and your sin went upon him. I think that's the big tragedy when you understand that Jesus' own Father, who he came to earth for, to show us who the Father was, to live that perfect life, but to point out who his Father was and to obey his Father, had to see his Father turn away and say, I cannot look upon sin anymore. I can't look upon it. Jesus' physical body was broken for us. It was rent for us. It was bled dry for us. For the world. Not just for us. For the world. So we could have salvation. And then we celebrate that we have also, not just that we have salvation and forgiveness of sin, but the resurrection gives us eternal life. That now we can have forgiveness of sin and a relationship with God and be in his presence forever. Amen to that.
Yep.
Then the results of reconciliation. Reconciliation is a redemptive act, Romans 3:21 through 26. But now apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We know that verse is a lot. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Jesus Christ. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness, because in his forbearance we had left the sins committed before him unpunished. He did it to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time as to be just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. We have two things there. You see the judicial justification, that in the court of law you have been, in the court of spiritual law, you have been, as you come to faith in Jesus Christ, you have, because he took your sin, his blood covered your sin, you have been atoned for all of your sin has been atoned for. You now, the judge has pounded the gavel and said, not guilty. In your case, you are declared not guilty. And then you have progressive sanctification. Eric has talked about that a number of times, as we're saved, we're being saved, and then in the glorification act, we are the fullness of our salvation is known. So, put up Mark. So going to close with Mark. So, verse out of Mark there? Yes. We know we're really familiar with in Matthew 28, what they call the Great Commission. To go into all the world, to preach the gospel, to baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Right? We're really familiar with that. Mark has one too, but it's very simple. It says, he said to them at the moment of his ascension, he said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Creation. It's just not the people. What does that mean? How do I talk to the animals? To the plants? Do they hear me? Do they even speak my language? Can't go to college and learn how to speak fern. What does that mean? It means this. It means, I'm going to put it this way. In our world today, we have this big push for environmentalism, right? Do you know that we're the real environmentalists? The environmentalism today tends to be kind of quacky, as science can't agree. Are we destroying the ozone? Are we not destroying the ozone? All that stuff, and it tends to be more political. That the environmentalism today tends to have more political aspirations. Doesn't really have any of fixing it. Why? How do I know? Because if the sea levels are really rising, why are the people telling us are building houses on the beach? The people that are telling me that the sea levels are rising, we got to do something about it, are the people purchasing houses on the beach. I don't really believe them. Well, sorry if I don't believe you, if you're buying a house on the beach and the sea levels are rising. All right? But we are the environmentalists. Why? Because when we preach the gospel and human beings come to Christ, we are the cap of creation. We are the top of it. What did God tell Adam and Eve to do when it came to the rest of the Garden of Eden? To subdue it and to rule over it, right? They took care of it. We are the environmentalists because when we preach the gospel and when people come to Jesus, come to Christ, and their life begins the sanctification process, and you start walking with God, and you start, things come right in you, you became part of the redemption of all of creation. All of it. The natural world also. It's hard for us to think about what does it mean when it says that the lion lays down with the lamb in the kingdom, does it not? In my world, the lion kind of eats the lamb. I don't know. Something changes. Something goes back to its roots when we participate in the gospel, in spreading the gospel, and the kingdom grows through souls being added to it daily. We become the truest of environmentalists. We save creation, not we. God does, but He's using us. He wants us to participate just by telling a neighbor, telling your grocery store clerk, telling your work associates about Jesus. It's not hard to get into conversations about religion because people really want to talk to you about it. Sometimes it's breaking down that barrier that is this distrust because of, as Eric talks a lot about, the hokiness out there in the Christian world can get really distasteful to people. I'll close in this. This is what, as in my reaching into the world as I work in it so deeply, what people are more apt to find tasteful in Christians. When we are authentic. Authentic. When we're the real McCoy. When we're not always authentic when we come into this place. Do you know that? Church is sometimes the most unauthentic place you can be, because I bet you if we really took an inventory of going on, that everybody in this place has got something they're dealing with. How many people, when someone took their hand today and asked how they were doing, and I did it too, I'm not pointing fingers. If a finger's being pointed, there's 5 coming back at me. Oh, I'm fine. Things great. Things awesome. we put a mask on, come to church laden with burdens that we don't feel comfortable enough to share with our fellow burdened people. Maybe that's the way we can break down, become more authentic when when we know we're authentic, when we can share things with one another and not feel that person's going to be broadcasting it to the world and using it against us. That's real authentic Christianity. Is it not?
Yep.
Let's not put masks on when we come here. And let's go out there and don't put a mask on either. Don't put a mask on out there and act like you're better because you're a Christian than they are. We're not. We're only more blessed. Right? Nothing you did, but God's blessing, and show them the blessing can be theirs too. This blessing and wonderful life we live, it's not of our own making. It's of Jesus Christ living in us through His Spirit that creates this wonderful life that we live. Yeah, we got problems. One last little quick story, and I'm going to close with this, I promise. Someone asked me why I'm not, why are you not a store manager? I have the ability and the aptitude, the knowledge to have my own store. I could. And I probably had an opportunity many times to go in that direction. And why am I not the district? I mean, I could do district manager work. I just look at my boss and then the district. I work and going to these project stores, I've been working closely with the district manager, and I see what it comes down to this. I chose greater things than the career. I chose to be with my children more, with my wife and family more. And my family knows, even at the level of work that I'm at now, I miss holidays and not there in the evenings all the time. Dinner time is like, what? Bryan's not here again. Already I'm missing so much. I would miss more as I climb that corporate ladder, and I couldn't do this and climb up that ladder. I chose greater things than to necessarily have the financial whereabout that would bring me more financial security, if you will. People don't understand that there's greater things out there than money. But then when they get to talk to me and I start sharing them with things, it's like this district manager, he's a Christian. He just moved up from way down south to the Port St. Lucie area. He's looking for a church. Like, well, I know a good church in Miko, but I don't know if you want to drive over there. But I could tell when he's flustered. And then there was a day. I got kind of Kylie, my youngest, who's got my grandson. She's already dealing with a lot, right? And she put on Instagram, she got me on this Instagram thing, which is cool. She wanted me to put my hunting pictures and stuff on it when I was away, but I just kept on it. And anyway, she put this very dramatic, like 911, I'm thinking things are bad. Colt had to go with her father, and Colt for 30 minutes did nothing but kick and scream, didn't want to go with it, and that affected her. Anyway, I didn't know this. All I know, she put this really dramatic, like, end of the world post on Instagram, and then I'm like, I'm down in Waxahachie, and I'm trying to call her and text her, she's not answering me back. I'm having a world, like a nightmare. Is my kid suicidal? What's going on? But, so I'm looking at this thing, and my district manager goes, hey, what's going on? He goes, you look a little flustered. And I explained to him, and he goes, wow, I'd be running out of here. And I said, even though I'm anxious and everything, there's a peace inside of me that is telling me that everything's going to be all right. There's a peace in the storm. I have that. You have that. You have peace in the storms of life because Jesus rules your heart, right? We have blessings beyond compare to the world that doesn't, I mean, most people would run around with their head cut off. I was anxious, I'll be honest with you. I was a daddy being concerned. Turns out she was being overdramatic. Turns out, being overdramatic and put down there, she eventually took the post off when I finally got a hold of her, and, you know. But point is, I didn't know. And there was anxiousness, but there wasn't panic. Why? Because the voice of the Spirit of God that is in me is telling me, Bryan, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. There's peace. And so when I see, because I told him that I have peace in the storm, I saw him flustered because things aren't going good at that store. They can't get help in that store. And things are just crazy in that store. And all of Winn-Dixie Kingdom, the kingdom of Winn-Dixie, is looking upon this store because it's a new project store. It's the new model of the stores that are going to be built from now on, right? So all the corporate gurus are looking upon this, and things aren't going well there. And he's under this pressure. And I looked at him, I go, you're a believer. You have peace in the storm. He smiled at me. Because we have that. Peace in the storm and other blessings too. Lord, would you pray with me? Look, Father God, Lord, you are our King. You are our Master, Lord, and we just pray that as we hear your words today, as we read these scriptures and we've heard this teaching, Lord, I pray that you would empower us to help in this act of reconciliation, that we would be a part in a mighty way in this community, in all of Sebastian, of Barefoot Bay, of wherever we go, Lord, that you would put us in that place where we can, and give us the courage and the knowledge to speak the gospel that is the power to salvation to those who are lost. Lord, I pray that you would just bring people to us, that you would be like moths to light, and that we would light them up with the knowledge of who you are and the blessings that we get from you, Lord. I pray all this in the name of your mighty Son, Jesus. Amen.